Today we're pleased to have Ron Miller, who was born and raised in Wheeling, attended Lindsley and Washington Jefferson College, and the Ye Olde Alpha restaurant was in his family for 70 years, and he's going to tell us a little about the history of that legendary place. Here he is, Ron Miller.
Thank you all, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks to the County Library. If I was running for an office at this time as a politician, I'm sure there wouldn't be anybody here. So we have a nice turnout, and I really appreciate that. And I know my father, who was at the Alpha for many, many, many years, would appreciate it too. Nowadays, in my retirement, I spend quite a few hours at Wednesday in the museum and archives as a volunteer. So I made it a point to give you all a postcard of the main gallery. And of course, we welcome you all. It's free. It's in the newspaper every week, I guess. It's free, and on Wednesdays from 10 o'clock until in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. And I think you'll enjoy it because in 6 years we're going to be celebrating our 200th anniversary. The school actually started right here in downtown Wheeling. So, in our archives, I located or ran across a souvenir program, hardback, and it's the Wheeling Centennial in 1936. I'm sure the library probably has a copy of this. But anyway, in the back of this document, program was this page that I handed out about Lindsley, and I thought that was really neat. And also, in the same book, people who put ads, and in there we have the Alpha Beer Grill, beer and sandwiches, 48 Cotton Road, and that was really cool when I found that. So, I keep turning this the wrong way. I'm still trying to find out why I'm here, because on the back of this brochure, it says lunch with books, bring your lunch, enjoy programs by authors. Of course, I'm not an author. Historians, I'm certainly not a historian. Musicians, I gave that a thought because when I was 9, 10 years old, she sent me out for piano lessons, but I didn't think that counted. And then it said here a variety of other presenters. And I thought that was polite. That's probably me, which means miscellaneous with no special talent. So, anyway, let's get on to. I'm having trouble with this microphone. Let's get on with what we're here for. As Sean mentioned,
it's a loose wire. Maybe once you get it and put it in the holder so it won't move anymore.
Is that going to hold now? Okay.
Yeah.
The Alpha was in our family for 70 years. My dad, in 1934 through 2004. Myself, I only spent 7 years there in the mid-80s. I was there back in 1953 as my first summer job ever, and that's when the Alpha was really the Alpha. I learned a lot from my father as a 16-year-old, and of course I was riding high because I had my new, 1950 Chevy, did my driver's license and the front key to the front door. So that was a great song. The brochure I handed out to you, this is a condensed version of the one that I gave out to the Wheeling Historical Society. And on the front you will see the picture of the Alpha, the bar entrance actually. And if you notice like a triangle on the top there, I'm going to tell you what I knew, say, 30, 40 years ago. And it's all I knew until I researched. Margaret Brennan is the one that got me into this because her uncles were involved with the Alpha Bar back in the early 30s for 1 year. And she came out to the archives one time in Lindsley, and the next thing I knew, I had a letter from her giving me a date in April to appear before the Wheeling Historical Society. And she said, she used the word, you're going to have to do some snooping. And I hadn't heard that word since I was about this high, when my mother used to accuse me of looking around stupid for a cookie. But it was interesting. I spent 2 months here, thanks, in the library, not every day, but the wheeling room and the microfilm. Amy, John, Diane, they were all very helpful. And thank God for the records here. And also at the High County building, or I mean at the county building, you know, assessor's office, et cetera, et cetera. So, I just want to mention, though, put in your mind the same thing that I knew 40, 30 years ago. The only thing I knew was a theater. Don't know when, don't know the year, didn't know anything, except it was a movie theater. And that my father got involved in the business in 1934. That's basically all I knew. So when I started this research, it was really interesting to find out, and if you turn to the next page, you'll see two people there. And all these Millers I'm going to mention are not relatives of us. My dad, my brother, and myself were the only relative Millers. All other Millers were not relatives of us. And this gentleman on the right-hand side, the wedding picture, he came out of Germany. He was with his family. He was born in 1865. He wrote as a youngster. His name was Mueller, Leopold Mueller, M-U-L-L-E-R, with an umlaut on the U. He married the lady on the left-hand side there, Mary Miller, and that was her maiden name, Miller. So he assumed the name Miller also, which may have been what Mueller stood for. He was a theater guru, and what I mean by that is he had the Majestic Theater out on Elm Road, he had the Princess Theater, he had the Mayfair, which I spent many years at as a kid on Saturday matinees, and of course he built the Alpha Theater. Now, somebody had told me he had the Southern Theater downtown, but I could find no evidence or documentation to prove it. But just as hearsay. He also had a dairy farm out at Elm Road, which is now known as Mill Acres. That's why Mill Acres got the name. It's from Leopold. He was a well-established individual in his time here. In fact, Kathleen Miller, right over here, is his granddaughter. She's sitting right here. And she has to leave here shortly for another appointment. But I wanted to let you know that she's here. I found her by just a stroke of luck, you know, doing some snooping, as Kirk would say. Also, there's a Dr. Miller out in Short Creek Road, the veterinarian. He is a grandson of Leopold, and he's married to Penny Miller, the curator at OPC. So, and I ran him down at Lindsley. I have a daughter, I have a granddaughter there playing volleyball, and I ran him through an older couple in their 80s. His name was Bill Miller, and he was a relative. Leopold was a great uncle to him. He remembers him. So, you know, when you look around, you run into people. There's a lot of Millers flying around. So, a lot of them are relatives to Leopold. Let's continue on. The next is actually a copy, and it's not a good copy, but that's because this is what it looked like in the deed book. This goes back in the 1880s, and there was a guy by the name of William B. Hope. He was a lawyer. His home was in Echo Point up there on top of Chickenick Hill. He was also a land agent. He had a brother who was a surveyor. So what you see there are all the plots in Edgewood, Edmonton Lane area. And the one I highlighted, lot number 31, was the one that Leopold bought and built his theater. The lot 32 used to be the McGrath house, which was, of course, purchased by my brother, Bob, and torn down and made a parking lot. And lot number 30 is the house attached to the Alpha, which you use now as the main entrance to the dining room. We'll touch on that briefly. You can see on that diagram also the alley that goes up beside it, and you can see Edgerton Lane. Now, that road is marked Carmel Road, or, I'm sorry, Poplar Avenue. Used to be Cherry Street way back in the early 1900s, and then it became Poplar Avenue. And then Poplar Avenue moved, of course, I call it north, a block up by the fire station, and it's now Carmel Road, of course. So if you turn the page, you're going to see a diagram, and this is compliments, not to me, but this photograph is compliments of Press Studio. Taken up on the hill, up behind where maybe it was called Frederick's, now used to be Zenith's cafeteria, or restaurant. That's a shot in 1894. And I'm going to use my marker here. You see that house there in your diagram and your photograph? That is the house that is there now. Of course, it's had vinyl siding and, you know, modifications to it. But that was the farmhouse right there. And there is Carmel Road as we know it now. Right there, a little pass on Carmel Road, that's a steam train. The steam train ran by there from Wheeling to Elm Grove in those days, and later became trolley cars. Chickenick Hill right here, there was a dirt road, of course, in those days, in the mansion. And Edgewood Street's back here. This is an old farmhouse too, but it's no longer there. But all this land here is what you saw on the previous diagram that was laid out by Hope. If you go in that old house, which I have been in the past years ago, there used to be a lady lived there, and my dad bought it for back taxes. He allowed the lady to live there until she passed away. There was a wooden, I should say, a dirt floor. You had to duck your head down. You could tell it was a pre-1900 construction because the foundation was stone. Some of the later concrete stucco had been put around there had fallen. And like I say, it was a dirt floor, very low ceiling. And that's the way it is right now, if you went down. The next photograph is from and this is compliments of Harry Ham's photo file, which of course is on the High County website. This is a picture taken, and when I really found this one out, I really went berserk. This is 1914. And on the right-hand side, or right-hand corner there, you're going to see Edgerton Lane School. And I attended Edgerton Lane School. And I lived on Miller Street. No relation, but Miller Street was off Edgewood Street. So I could walk down to the park right to school. And Ed Karengard told me that there's some family relation, why it was named Miller. It was named after a lady in the family. That's where it's got the name. It did get a name from us. But you can see the Alpha, if you look at the top of Edgerton Lane School, when you go about an inch to the left, you're going to see a building, long, looks like long black roof with a white side. That's the Alpha. That's in 1914. And of course it was a theater. And that was really interesting. In fact, over about the center of that photograph, towards the bottom, you're going to see a big house there. Was Colonel's drugstore in my days. And of course, right across the street, it's not there. In this photograph would be the meat market and the apartments. And you can see also that there's a lot of building going on around. My understanding is in 1910, a lot of houses were erected in Woodsdale and Edgerton Lane area. And as Gene reminded me, that 1920 is when the areas like Elm Grove, Pleasanton, Edgewood, and Woodsdale were annexed into the city of Wheeling. And there were 60, counting all those areas, there were 60,000 people in this area in 1920. So let's go to the next photograph or picture. And I always wondered in doing this research, when was the Alpha actually built? And that was a big question. Nobody knew. You know, I had people tell me, well, of course, they were all false rumors out there. You know, it used to board horses. It used to be a bowling alley. Well, that's not true. It was never any of those. It was a theater and a restaurant and bar. But in the newspapers back in 1913, as you can see, I found this article through the microfilm here at this library. And I told Amy I fell off the chair when I found this because this tells me everything I wanted to know. On March the 2nd was this article, and a column read out the pike. So the newspaper had a column every day that read out the pike, things that went on in Elm Grove, Pleasanton, Woodsdale, Edgerton Lane, and there it is. You can see that the building was built in January and February of 1913. The first movie was shown on March the 1st, 1913. And then as I continued through researching the newspapers in that time for that year, I found a lot of article there which tells you about the Christmas feature in that particular time of 1913, which was very interesting. Now they mentioned about a large crowd was present both yesterday afternoon and evening. My guesstimation was there wouldn't be more than 100, 150 people to be able to sit there and watch a movie. I have been upstairs in the past years. It's no longer there because of structural problems that had to be removed. But there was a large plaster dome. And on each side of that, my mother always called them angels. They were cherubs on each side of the dome. And there used to be a small stage, so there was some vaudeville going on there, and of course silent movies. And some old timers told me later on in the 20s it became, they call it a Nickelodeon, like the Majestic Theater was out of Elm Grove back in 1913. Now, this particular picture is, I've had this in my person, in my files for years. I took this picture with an old Kodak instant camera where you had to use an applicator, some of you may remember. This is the year I was talking about that I spent my first summer. My dad hired me. I used to open the place up at 7 o'clock in the morning. And what's important, if you look on the right-hand side, you're going to see that house. That is the house that you're going to see in this picture here, this bottom picture, the same house. Back in those days, of course, the ladies did not come into a bar. You'll notice that the entrance to the grill on the left-hand side was a sidewalk there with an overhang. Husbands brought their wives in to the back room there where the restaurant was with tables. We had about 25 tables back there to see 100 people. Or you know, girlfriends or friends. That's the way the ladies, there was a door back there about 70 feet. The building was only like 30 feet across by 90 feet long. And the lot was only 40 feet by about 122 feet. All those lots in that area were the same size. And that's the entrance there. And later on, you're going to see, if you look at the photograph, I shouldn't say later on the front, you're going to see where the overhang is no longer there. The front entrance was extended out some 5-6 feet to, there was a big walk-in cooler there on the left-hand side, also an office on the right-hand side. Also, you'll see an extension of the small building on the right. Later on in the 50s, in fact, I had my bachelor party in there. It was called the Key Club. It was an idea of my father's. The Key Club, members had a key, only males. It was gambling. There was a couple slot machines. There was a chuckle-up game, a half-moon bar with about 6 bar stools. And in those days, of course, Wheeling, as you know, those of you who don't know, I'll tell you, Wheeling was wide open in the 50s. That's the way it was. You could walk down the street in the middle of the night and nobody would bother you across the system. We used to walk across the Spencer Bridge and go to a football. There's 12-year-olds. Take a bus downtown. Next page. The Alpha chronology. And this is where a lot of my research came in. Of course, a lot of the knowledge that I had being in the family and working there for a few years. And here inherited storage from my parents. But you'll see where I've also mentioned the 1890, 1912 vacant lot. There were 4 or 5 owners of that lot that nobody ever built. I don't know why. One of them was a saloon operator. And that's where we have a couple of attorneys back there. When you look at the Wheeling directories right over here in the Wheeling, you're going to find out the listing on these tables, more saloons, a page and a half in Wheeling in those days than lawyers. In fact, there were more confectionaries in Wheeling than lawyers. Times have changed. So then, 1913 to 28, I mentioned the vaudeville, Nickelodeon, and of course I had on the silent movies. And, you know, the Alpha went through an awful lot during those days, like a lot of other businesses. You had the World War I, you had the 1918 worldwide pandemic flu, which they shut down, by the way. The theaters in Wheeling, and I'm sure the Alpha was shut down too for a while, until the flu bug was clear. And then you had annexation, and you had prohibition, and you had depression. And actually, the depression is what closed the Alpha. The building on that particular side of that building was closed for a couple of years. And also Wheeling built up too, you know, Wheeling had a lot of theaters to entertain. Flowers lived right down the street from the Alpha. They owned a confectionery, which all theaters did. It was candy and popcorn, and they called it confectionery in those days. 29, I found out with Ambrose Becker, who I know that name, knew him. He had the barber, and the reason there was 48 and a half Carmel Road and 50 Carmel Road, because the building was split into 2 in those days. And in fact, when I worked there, we used to still get mail at 40, the address was 48 Carmel Road, which actually was my Graff's house. But for years, the mail came to the Alpha was 48, not 50, which of course now is 50. And each year there, I found these items in the Wheeling directory. You'll see that Flowers continued to stay there. You'll see where the theater did not. It was gone, and actually 28 was probably the last year, or maybe partial 29 during the Depression started. Now in 1932, there was a gentleman by the name of Pete Stork. I knew him very well, a very good friend of my dad's, of course older than my father. That's why on the front of the awning it says 1932 the Alpha, because that's the first time it had a restaurant in it. And then in 34 and 36 was when my dad was involved there. There was also, you know, during the Depression, I guess a lot of people trying to find a living or a way to survive. And there was a farm woman's market there, and I don't know what that was. I mean, maybe it was, who knows. But my dad also had, although he was a window dresser in town for one of the major department stores in earlier years, and I think he drove a coal truck. He got through 6th grade and quit and supported his family. They were immigrants from Hungary. So he really didn't have an education, but he was smart enough to know some of these people out there, and he had a little corner out there where he cleaned hats and shined shoes, but there was a tarpaulin up there. Behind the tarpaulin there was a poker table and booze. So he would run on a poker game and sell the liquor. And like I mentioned, Margaret Brennan, if you'll notice that in 1933, after the Prohibition ended, Jack and Larry was a barber and Jack was a timekeeper, I think, with William Steele. They were Margaret's uncles, and I knew them both. And they leased that building, it was vacant, and put up $300 a piece and built a bar. And they had a bar there. But after 1 year, my dad, who was a Miller, and Leopold Miller, you know, he had an N with the last name. My dad took over the lease. I always thought he bought the business in 34, but that's not true. He leased the business in 34. And the Brennans were out. And then in 35, Leopold, who was getting older, you know, he was getting up in age, he sold the business, the property, I should say, the building to his, or maybe gave it to one of his sons, Henry. And later on in 1945, right after the war, is when my father actually purchased the building and the property from him. 1940, you'll see Tom. That's Tom Emmert and Becker's, right across from the old Yodeling School. I used to go there and get lunch every day for 10 cents. He owned Tom's Bar there on Edgerton Lane, which is now the bowling alley, next to Frank Senna's barbershop. And how he got involved with the Alpha, I don't know. Maybe Dad just let him set up there while he was building that building across the way. And I mean, Dad might have been looking for more money too. He was probably running the poker game. You know how those things went in those days. But there was also Miller's Confectionery, and I think it was probably Dad. He kept that part of the business, or leased it and leased it. And then in 1941, you'll find the first name, the first time you'll see Ye Olde Alpha. Of course, Dad was still leasing then in 41, but he's the one that gave it the name Ye Olde Alpha, which really stands now. Okay, let's turn the page. And I wish the picture that is there is much better. It just didn't turn out well. But that's a picture in 1955 of behind the bar. That's my father standing underneath the moose head. The back right-hand side of the bar, you're going to see an exhaust area, like an exhaust fan system. That's where all the food was cooked. We didn't have a kitchen in those days. We had a sink in the furnace room where we used to go back and wash the dishes. But all the steak sandwiches and all the French fries, and hamburgers and salads and ham sandwiches, they were all prepared right there behind the bar. And below is one of his pictures of when he came back with Sid Wiseman after hunting some elk. Dad actually took down, he was an avid hunter and fisherman. And he's responsible, him and his partner who went with him on these big game hunting trips. Alaska, Canada, Colorado. Every couple of years he'd come back with something. It started in 55, that was the beginning of it. He came back with the moose. In fact, one of my jokes is I started college that year. And, you know, the suitcase college at WJ took 45 minutes a day to get there. I used to come home, as all the college kids do probably nowadays, looking for a good home-cooked meal. And I'd walk in and I'd say, "What's for dinner, Mom?" She said, "Moose." And maybe a couple years later, she'd say, "Elk," or whatever he came back. All right, the next page is the milestones, and I've listed these only for somebody who's a historian. And this is the area that really I'm more familiar with because I lived it and I was there. In 45, when he bought the Alpha, right after the war is when he remodeled our drug construction, the remodeling. And it's as it is today, all the cabinets behind the bar, you know, the panelings, all the best you could buy in those days. And it's still the same. And all the animals you see. I mean, my mother used to go on trips with him to Florida and come back with fish, deep sea fishing. Go to New York, or she went to Canada with a cup of con. They brought back a little baby black cub bear. And we had to, for a pet for a couple of months, and we had to give it over because it was getting too big. In those days, you were allowed to do that. Now, in 1947, I'm really familiar with this. And I mention this because it's called the Cricket Club. Now, if you turn over, flip over another page, you're going to see a picture of the Cricket Club. And on the back of that picture, you're going to see the write-up I made on it. The Cricket Club was Wheeling's second nightclub. It was very fancy, big dance room, floor, large fireplace, fancy bar. It was named after our Beagle hunting dog. She was somebody's precious, and that's where Dad got the name Cricket. And he always had a plan, or going to New York and Florida, he'd always been in nice restaurants. He always wanted to build a nice restaurant. So that was his rendition of it. He bought that property for $8,000, like 12.5 acres. It's on the Waters Run Road, and it's now a veterinary hospital. So let's go back to the previous milestones. In 1952, I listed there something called a swamp cooler. I didn't even know what a swamp cooler was, but it's and they still exist, high technology in the South and out West. They're air conditioners. Alpha had one of the first air conditioners probably in Wheeling. And what it was about the size of an outhouse, but it wasn't boarded up on the sides, it didn't have a roof. But we had grids, wooden grids you slid in there and water trickled down, a fan blew the air into ductwork, and another fan was was drawing it in, and you had air conditioning. and it worked. And the reason I knew that because I had to clean the ductwork and I had to clean the grids. That was one of my jobs in '53. And the Alpha phone number was 438. And back in those days, you pick up the phone and you get an operator. And the operator talks to you, you got to know their voice, and they got to know who you were. And they took their plugs and plugged in who you wanted to call. But one thing, I only messed it up a couple of times at first, but one thing I had to learn as a 16-year-old here is the bar is full of gentlemen. A lot of noise and carrying, not carrying on, just conversation. And the phone would ring and it was clear down at the far end by the main door. And we had a signal. One was, I'm not here. Two, I'm on my way home. Three, I'll take the phone call. So I only messed up a couple of times. People down the other end of the bar, you can't yell at them. So that was the fun we had with that phone number. And Dad, by the way, was, he liked his horses once in a while, and that was the number he used to use for his trifecta, 438. Sometimes would come in. So the Moose Head map in the bar room, I mentioned that as the beginning. And what I mean by that, that's the first big game trip that he took after big game. He never went to Africa, but all your big game, that one caribou there with what they call a double shovel, the famous outfit, Boone Club, whatever it is, they wanted to take that head all around the country on trips, and Dad wouldn't let him do it because it was a record at that time. And it's hanging there. And I mentioned already the Pleasanton Key Club. That went on for 4 or 5 years. The old farmhouse I mentioned, 1966, that's when they had purchased that for back taxes. And then the construction of the main dining room and kitchen. Now in 1967, liquor, that was big for the state of West Virginia, liquor became legal by the drink. So of course, a lot of owners of bars started building restaurants, making it a little fancier. And that's what they did. That main dining room was added on in 1967. And then the old farmhouse, which we talked about, 1970, was connected to the Alpha via ramp, and those were small rooms that they used to overflow crowds or either ladies in their bridge clubs. And there was also storage at one time. And then in the 80s, a lot of things happened. The Alpha was incorporated as a business in 1980, and rezoning as a commercial property, and the front entrance was extended, as I mentioned before, by 5 feet. McGrath, it should be a TH, not a PH. The house was purchased. That was an agreement my brother had with Dale well before he passed on. And a new parking lot was established. And then the side of the building, the new parking lot, the side of the building was remodeled. And then I mentioned previously about the removal of the theater ceiling plaster and the chairs. That was important because they were, over the years, it deteriorated, started to crack. Pieces fell down, the drop ceiling, and the roof was going to be overhauled, and all this was noticed at that time. So my brother decided to remove it, and the chairs were cracked, and they could not be saved. And I'm just sorry that, like I told Mark Brennan, I didn't think about it as a youngster or whenever, take pictures, but that's what happens. So then in the 90s, we had new kitchens, a new kitchen built, which is a whole new section. And then later on in the 90s, we had the new dining room, which goes out to the alley, and that has a full basement. That's another thing I didn't mention earlier. The original building that the theater was made was a crawl space only underneath there. There's pipes and drains and sewers and that, but it's all dirt and held up by supports. There's no basement. And that's the way they did it in those days. In fact, I can remember very vividly, the back room had a slight slope to it. And that was part of the theater, now that I start to think about it. And of course, we had to level that floor because we had a pool table back there. I can remember back as a 4-year-old going in there, and the back room had 4 pool tables. That's what it was a pool hall in the back room. We also remodeled the outside of the old farmhouse and put in new sidewalks. And then in 2000, we had an entrance to the bar room remodeled. And that's the stone you see on that picture at the front with his hand out, or as you see now the way that my brother came up with that idea. He saw it someplace, they had gone on vacation, they liked it, so he decided to put the stone. And it does look nice. It's attractive. And the old kitchen area, which is across from the bar, that was changed to an area with the higher tables, which is the higher bar stools, which seems to be the latest thing, in the past few years, people sitting up high. My brother never got to see that finished, but his son is an architect. He finished it for his dad in 2004. And then the new owners, Mark Thomas and Charlie Schlegel, they made the old house into the entrance, as we've been in there recently, into the dining room. Which we never had back in our time. Now, let's see. On the next page, look over. I was doing, the last few years, I've been helping out the OVAC research old football players from the All-Star game so they can honor the next year. And I had this one football program from 1948, and look what I found. The Cricket Bar and Restaurant, Waddles Run, Woodsdale, 303, and Ye Olde Alpha. Of course, the E is missing. Carmel Road, Woodsdale, and there's the phone number, 438. I never knew my dad to do my advertising, but there it is. Somebody got to me. And both businesses were there, so that'd be 1948, and that's when the Cricket opened. Cricket was built in 47 and opened up in early 48. And I thought that was priceless when I found that. Okay, we talked about the cricket and the radar. Now, since we mentioned the steam train that went by the Alpha, and also on the next page the trolley, I thought it would be appropriate that some people didn't know what a steam train looked like, so their old trolley threw it in there, just for conversation. A lot of people ask me about stories. One of my favorite stories, and I told this at the Rotary Club here a couple months ago, is only because young John Kepler was there. I told him that back in 1953, like I said, I was only 16 then. I said, on a Friday night between the hours of 4 and 6 o'clock, we had many politicians at the Alpha. My dad had a lot of friends in Wheaton, and a lot of them were politicians and lawyers and other business people. And they seemed to gather at this watering hole, after work every day, bank offices, you name it. And they came in a lot of times, not only socialize amongst themselves, and these were all men now, like I say, there's no women. And a lot of them come in to see my dad or talk to my dad. So I told Kepner, I said, during those hours of 4 and 6, the Alpha had embalmed more people than they did all week. And then they came back the next morning for a Bloody Mary. So I thought that was pretty cute. And then, of course, my dad taught me a lot in 53 about the business. And, I learned how to pour a draft and make sure there was a 2-inch head on it, so you make more money. instead of filling the glass up with all beer. And, you know, things like cooking steak. The famous food back in those days was the steak sandwich. There's no doubt about it. It was filet mignon, 4 or 5 inch ounces, patted out and grilled on that grill. And I mean, they sold thousands of them. I don't know how many I cooked myself, but just during the daytime for people coming in for lunch. Now, I want to allow some time for questions. I think Sean wanted to know about the animals. Well, like I said, my dad and one of his partners, a different partner that sometimes went on the big game trips and brought them back. And my mother and dad did a lot of fishing, and they did that. My deer heads, my first deer heads up there still, and my brother's first deer head. With the moose, my brother started in the 1990s, the logo, he made the moose the logo, and it still is today. It was his idea. And I think the pictures on the, you know, on the menu, and t-shirts, they sell t-shirts and sweatshirts with the moose on them. So. Any questions? I'm ready to answer some questions. We've got about 15 minutes.
I have a question.
Yeah,
So let me understand, the theater part, if you're looking at the Alpha, the theater part was kind of the left half?
No, the theater was in the back. You know, the building was like 30 feet by 90 feet. You come in through the front door, and there'd be a confectionery there.
and then you go on back, and the plaster I'm talking about was clear in the back, up high, and the cherubs, the angels, as my mother said, looking over the Alpha all those years. And the chairs, we don't know, I don't know what they look like, of course, but they would face that direction.
But on the left side?
Oh yeah, well the only part that was in existence in those days was the left side, the bar. As you know, at the bar, yeah, that other part wasn't built until 1967. You know, the dining area, the large dining area. Yeah, it was just a rectangular building straight back, you know, and 30 feet by 90 feet. And that was it. And like I say, the other additions would be on later.
And when there was let me go back, when there was a theater there and something else, like 1913 to 1928, there was the vaudeville theater and a confectionery.
Right.
So it was a confectionery on the...
Be on the right-hand side.
Okay, so it was to the right.
Yeah, not, you know, part of that right-hand side of the building had to be removed when the building was in 1967. But if you came into the building, I'm assuming the area I'm talking about would be on the right-hand side of the confectionery. And then you go on back until where the seats were facing towards the fire station to watch the movie,
Okay.
silent movie.
All right, and then the old farmhouse would have been on the right side.
As you stand in front of the Alpha as it is now, it's on the right-hand side.
Okay.
And that-
And it's behind the newer front. It's still there?
No, huh?
It's,
Stay again.
the old farmhouse is still there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the entrance to the Alpha now is for the dining room. That's the new owners made that an entrance. And there also is a staging area there, if you will, for the overflow. You can go on the right-hand side and buy a drink or something, and they'll give you tacos or something. So,
Okay.
yeah, that house, the front of the old Alpha, the front of the theater, and that house would be, you know, the same, on the same, proportionally the same from the sidewalk. And you'll notice Cromwell Road is very wide there. You know, the parking in front of the Alpha is straightforward. Well, that's because of the train tracks and the trolley. So that's why the width there is, you know, Cromwell Road. Question, who else? Anybody else? Yes.
See where Leopold Miller buried? Is he buried in?
Yes, he is. That's how I found out a lot about his family on Calvary Cemetery.
Okay.
Yeah. Go out there, and in fact, they got a huge big plot. All the family members are there. That's how I found out the names of the family, and there were some other pictures which I didn't get. You know, I wasn't interested in doing a complete history of Leopold Miller's family. I was interested more so in the Alpha. So, being Leopold was the builder of what the Alpha is part now. That's why. But Kathleen, she had brought me those papers in and list all the children that came over from Germany and the whole family.
The cricket club also
became Eric's Steakhouse, did it not? Is that, was that?
That is true. Dan sold, I neglected to say that, both businesses were, you know, I guess there was a lot of stress involved. And Dan sold the business in '53 to Cricket Club and kept the Alpha course. And there was another, Howard, or he was a sheriff or something close, or chief of police, sheriff. He bought the business for a few years, and then it became Eric's Steakhouse for quite a few years. And then some other teenage place, I don't know, some 84 or whatever. I was out of town, I think, during some of those years, so I didn't follow it too much. But I know the property was bought. Johnny Green was a very good friend of Dad's and spent a lot of time behind the bar cooking, and just for something to do. And his daughter's still alive. Johnny Green had the farm where the Vineyard Church is. It was a cattle farm, or dairy farm. There was an old farmhouse torn down. The old spring is still there. But Dad bought that property and knew Johnny from many years back. And he bought that property on 12 and a half acres for $8,000. Maybe a few $100,000. Next question. Any questions?
What was Babe's full name and how long did he?
Sylvester Hurt, H-I-R-T. His daughter-in-law, his sister-in-law is still alive. They're in Homestead by Home Good Shepherd. I talked to her not long ago. Because I took a couple pictures of Babe up to her that we had. In fact, one is now. He started out as a bartender with Dad at the Cricket Club. And he was a coal miner who either got laid off or didn't like what he was doing. And Dad hired him. I mean, he didn't even know how to use a cash register. He didn't know how to pour a beer. He didn't know nothing. So then when Dad left in 5 years, you know, he told Babe to come on down. And Babe says, nah, I want to stay up here at the Cricket. So I think he was there a year, and then he decided to come down to the Alpha. And my God, he worked there 35 years, maybe something like that. Yeah, he's a mainstay like the moose. Any other questions? But his name was Sylvester. But nobody knew him by that. It was Babe or something. Yeah. And he always had that big chew in his mouth. He didn't allow you to sing at the bar. He didn't allow you to cuss. And one of the old-time policemen brought in one of his billy sticks, and that's what Babe used to, you know, he'd bang the bar if somebody got out of hand, which wasn't very often. Because, you know, I've always said that if the Alpha was built downtown, it would never be here. The only reason it's there now is because it's a neighborhood business. And that's the way it was. It's a neighborhood bar. And a lot of people who built homes out there, and businessmen, they lived out there, and businesswomen and spouses, they'd all congregate at the Alpha. Some of them even could walk to the Alpha and stagger home. Yes, there's Margaret.
Could you tell us the story of the decision to sell?
Did I tell a story?
Of this decision to sell the Alpha. Nobody in the family wanted to continue it?
Oh, no. The reason the business was sold was I was retired, of course. And like I said, I only spent about 7 years. My brother owned the business. He took the business over from my father. And Dad passed away in 1985 and 78. And Bob passed away in 2004. And his wife was, of course, through the will, received the Alpha. And she wasn't able to handle it, you know. And so a year later, in August of 2005, she sold it to Charlie and Mark. And they've had it, what, 3 years plus. And I guess, I'm not going to guess, the business has been very, very busy and successful. Charlie's teaching culinary arts now. He is a chef. Mark's still commissioner until January 1st over Belmont County, plus he's an attorney. So they used to have the pastime over in Pittsburgh together. And then the Alpha became available. So, next question, go ahead.
Just a statement, when I was younger, we used to hang out at the Alpha a lot. Our younger life and married life, we used to get down there all the time. The food was excellent.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to say that it's even better today than it was then, and it's a fine restaurant.
Yeah, it is. And I know, Dennis Myers, who introduced himself back there in the red shirt, he was a WJ graduate also, and he knew me 2 years later. But he mentioned to me, and I had forgot to mention to you all, you know, there have been some famous people there. This Arthur Fiedler, when he was up at Ogilvy, he came down to the Alpha, and he liked his beer, I guess. And then I met Al Hurt. Al Hurt was there actually twice, the famous trumpet player. Then, of course, we had Rachel Warby and Governor Capers, and then, you know, I'm not going to say them all about that. Okay. Questions? Any more questions? Well, it's getting time to end the day, go back to work or something, I guess. But I want to thank you all. It's really been fun.
Yodeling Dick here to tell you about our happening. Lunch with books. Lunch with books has Pepsi, Nancy, cracks and yells and sings. Rocks and songs with war and door. Lunch with books. Lunch with books. At the Ohio County Public Library in Wheeling, West Virginia. It'll make you feel like yodeling. Hey, yodeling, 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 hey, yodeling, yodeling. Mostly on Tuesdays at noon. Bring your lunch, we'll provide the pot. And it's all free. Lunch with books. Knowledge is served.